Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you that are already jumping on live, I see you. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us today. If you're watching us on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we know that you were here and we can send you some love. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Kayla. Kayla's journey of resiliency, healing, and regeneration has led her to her mission, which is to be the change that our world needs by taking transformative action with like-minded individuals for one single purpose: to change lives. Kayla believes that recovery is really a journey of discovery because the greatest thing you have to offer in life is your authentic self. And you are worth knowing. I am so excited to welcome Miss Kayla today. Welcome, lady. How are you? It's so interesting hearing you say that. And that was one of the things that I wanted to notate is you said again and earlier on, I wanted to be a good mom. And it's so interesting to me because I don't know about you, but I'm a huge fan of Dr. Phil. I just adore his shows, and I know he has a lot of haters and a lot of admirers, but I love his show. But I look at these women or men sometimes, and I can't even fathom how they can be leading the lives that they're leading in drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, and they're still viewing themselves as a good mom or a parent, or they're to me, from the outside looking in, it just looks like you just gave up. So it's so interesting hearing you like honestly say, I literally wanted to be a good mom. What was the, like, when you taking yourself back to that point, did you have like a plan, or like tomorrow or next year? Like, was there an actual like soon? What was your thought process on knowing you wanted to be a good mom? So you knew that you weren't really.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like? Like, what's the time scale when you're in that mindset for you?
So I think for me, it was being able to provide was like a really important thing for my son as well. And I think I had this idea too, there was a lot of drug dealing, right? Like in the midst of like my adolescence, and then like with my relationship. And then I got into that because I was like, oh, business, I'm really good with business. I know, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, this is easy for me. And it became, so I got almost like addicted to that aspect of it too, of just like, okay, like I'm providing for my son, like who cares how I make my money, but I'm able to, as a single mom, like have our own place. He has a playroom and his own room and all these things, when really like when you look from, you remove yourself out of the situation, you're like, from outside, like this is so dysfunctional, this is so dysfunctional. And I was a functioning, user, right? Like I was, I wasn't stealing from anybody. I was hiding it pretty well, for years, because it was just like, I felt like I had almost control over it, until you don't have control over it.
Yeah.
And so in that space, it's like, you don't realize, I think being so young, you don't realize like how complex the needs are, and like how your actions and like what you're doing, like you're like, oh, they're young, they don't know what's going on, right? Like that's absolutely wrong, like that's truly wrong. But I didn't have that education to know that, right? So in my mind, I'm like, okay, like he doesn't know what's going on. When he was younger, and I was always very like present with my son, like throughout his younger years and stuff like that. Looking back now and like seeing, and obviously like being, losing custody of him and like going to a rock bottom where it was like, yeah, there's definitely no way that I was operating as a good mom in that sense, except for the fact that like I loved my child. And probably the biggest thing was that like when I knew my life was getting really difficult, I wanted him out of that space. So had already like put him with a relative, so that he wasn't living in the chaotic dysfunction of my addiction and my life and relationship and stuff like that. So I think like those were two good choices that I had, but I was still so selfish in the sense of like, this is my kid, right? This is my child. Like you're taking this child from me, and really not looking at it as so I was more so looking at like my needs in that sense, right? Like I need my child to feel competent as a person. This is my kid, rather than like what is my child's needs in this moment. And right now, like I'm not meeting those needs. And I think the switch for me was in treatment, really going from this place of still like angry, blame, victim, to like responsibility, truth, and then like really like stepping into that and owning it, and saying, what, like thank God, right? Like thank God that he was taken out of my custody, and thank God that I had left him with a relative at that time, because I was not operating in any sense of being able to care for him, provide for him, or be anything that he needed, and then it was more of like what are his needs, and putting him first, right? It was like, wow, like this whole time I've been really selfish in like putting myself almost first, like trying to put him first, but really just coming from a very selfish place to like, okay, this is really about him and what his needs are. And I mean, even when I got to the end of the road where it was like, now I'm simultaneously fighting a court case where I can go to prison and fighting for custody of my son, right? So those two don't look good together, because it's like, how are we going to even give you custody if you're going to have to potentially go to jail, right? Yeah. And then, and it was really hard because you're like trying to heal and like move towards things. And now you're like, it's all these other things that like you're doing wrong, and like, the things you've done wrong. And so it's like facing all of that while you already feel unworthy, while you already feel disgusted with yourself, while you're already like, going through the shame and the guilt and like all the things that I had experienced, because like I truly love my son, like that's like undeniable, but also what's undeniable is the fact that like I really couldn't care for him in that time, and I wasn't being a good mom for him, and for his needs. And I actually, it's a funny story, but throughout that experience in treatment, oftentimes I would find myself, it was like, the woods, you're in Tennessee in the middle of nowhere. So all these wooded areas, and I would be outside, and I would be fighting with God, like fighting in the air. Like, why is this happening? Like, why, like, why did all of these things happen in my life? Like, like, I'm just crying and then being like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just hated that there was a separation, because me and my son, no matter what, we were always so close. So even the separation was traumatic for me, and it was traumatic for him, because he was with me through everything, like we've been together. And so I would just cry, and I would argue with God, and I would just, plead my case, and I just like cursing God out, like I was just so angry. And then I would always say, like, if you can even hear me, like if you're listening, like show me a deer, like show me a deer. I want to see one, right? And I'd be like looking in the woods, and I wouldn't see a deer, and I'd just go about my day. And I probably did this like maybe 20 times throughout my like whole stay of like, show me a deer. Yeah. And as I got out of treatment, I was in IOP, and I started to go for runs in the morning, and I would go running through this like wooded area, because I really wanted to work on my health. I was, once I caught on to recovery, I'm like, man, like mind, body, spirit, like I want to really truly change, and so I'd go on these runs, and I would, be listening to my music. And at this point, like this is like like things were like really starting to set in because 2 weeks I had to turn myself back in, and the custody case with my son was actually like not looking good. The woman that he was with was his aunt on his dad's side. She wanted to keep him, so now she's fighting me on top of the state
Wow.
fighting me. Yeah,
Wow.
it was like really scary. And I'm like, I'm again pleading with God, like, why am I doing all of this? Like, why am I doing all of this if I'm not going to get, the one thing that I want? And so I'm out on this run and I'm running, and then I have my conversation again, fighting with God, and and that was where it was like this pivot, like it just hit me, and I'm just like, man, like, wow, like it's not even about that. I'm like, God, I trust you. Like, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you with my son, regardless if I get him back. Like, what's best. Like, if just like, what's best in my life, what's best in his life, no matter what, I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep changing. I'm going to keep growing. Even if I don't get to see him till he's 18, I'm going to be ready for that day that he comes back into my life so that I can be his mom. And I was just like, and if I have to go back to jail and I go to prison, there's somebody there that I need to help. And it was like all of these things that just kept coming out of me. And I'm just like, okay, God, like, I trust you. Like, I give him to you. I give this all to you. And I like literally like felt, I can't even put it into words. Like,
Yeah.
felt the presence of God that day for, and for the first time in a long time. And it was, and I literally fell to my knees. Like I fell there, like in this wooded road, like just trails, and I was crying, and I'm just like let out this storm, and surrender is really what it was, and just trusting, and I'm crying, and I kid you not, I literally lift my head up, and in 5 feet in front of me, there's not just one deer, there's a family of deer right in front of me. They're staring at me. I'm staring at them. I'm hysterical crying because I'm just like, like, this is crazy. This is so insane. And in that moment, and it really wasn't about the deer as much as it was about the surrender, but just like that God showed up and was like, I hear you. And I just knew in that moment, like, he hears everything that I'm saying. And I felt like no matter what the outcome was going to be, like, I was going to be okay, and I was going to continue the path, and that's really what that moment was for me. And it was like I would continue to pray for my son, and that, like, God would just protect him, and whatever that looks like, whatever's best for him, not what's best for Kayla. And so that was like such a divine moment in my life. And then literally 2 weeks later, I found out that because of just the judge and my probation officer and all of the people on my case had been just watching my journey and had seen this incredible transformation, they were dismissing all the charges. It was just so insane. So I was like on this high because I got like a message from the police officer, from my probation officer, and like police officer was like blown away. He's like, I just can't believe someone like you could change your life, and like, this is crazy, and if you ever need my support in court or whatever. And then like a few weeks after that, I was in court and I received custody back of my son. So that was,
Wow. Wow. Does your son know the story?
my son, yeah. So he's very aware of like the situation of what happened, and it's so like wonderfully beautiful because like as he's getting older, like we are able to have more like mature conversations. And like I always like pray, like God to kind of guide me in how to like speak to him, because I always want to be honest with him, but to the degree of what he can hear, and just I understand that like he has his own healing journey from everything too. He has his own testimony. Like, he is a champion, and he always believed in me. He believed in me when I was at my worst, and he believes in me at my best. I said, like, my son has always, he's looked at me as his hero, and I just wanted to be the hero that he saw, and so the beautiful thing is, like, he wrote me this Mother's Day thing this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this whole book, and he like colored me. It's the cutest thing. He wrote this poem about me. He put acronyms for my name, and he put a timeline of my achievements.
Wow.
And I was like shocked because like this is all him. The teacher was like, she was like, if it's a little funny, I let the kids do their own thing. I really didn't, check it or anything. I wanted it to be really from them. And on that timeline of achievements, it was like, in 5th grade, my mom won this crazy award or whatever. And then, my mom had me at, whatever. And then like, each achievement, but on there was like, in 2016, my mom became better. She became healthy. And like, I just started bawling because like that's what he knows, like he knew when I was me, when I was that mom that I always wanted to be. And so for him, like he champions that, and he knows the kind of work that I do. He has such a big heart too. And I think that some of his journey has to do with that as well. And then watching me struggle, watching me grow, watching me just really go through everything has been, in his perception and his mind and stuff. And he tells me, oh, yeah, I'm his hero, I'm his favorite person. And so that's the blessing really, is being able to step into that space and feel confident when my son looks at me in that way.
100%, definitely. Yeah, I can totally relate to the crying out. I know that I've done that several times in my life. I so appreciate the story that you had with that. So thank you for sharing.